friends. So today we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting three mixed numbers with unlike denominators. We have been adding two mixed numbers together, or we have been subtracting two mixed numbers. But today you're going to have three different add-ins to contend with. Now this particular problem has two operations. I see adding and I also see subtracting. There is an order of operations when you solve problems like this. You're always going to add numbers where you see, right, addition. So I'm going to put brackets around here, okay, because according to the order of operations, we should be adding any two add-ins together first before we do the subtraction, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and write this out, and what you'll notice is that we have three different denominators. The denominators all have to be the same. So I cannot even attempt to solve this problem yet until I have like denominators. So I am going to rewrite this equation vertically. But what I'm going to do first is, again, I'm going to convert or change my fractions to equivalent fractions. So again, I'm going to rewrite these fractions over here. I'm going to set this up so that I am creating an equivalent fraction. And I know I have to multiply these fractions by an equivalent of 1. Okay? So if I were to look at my denominators, I have a 2, a 4, and an 8. Now, those of us who are really good with mental math, we don't even have to do this chart. But for those of you who do not have your families or your multiplication down, you're going to go ahead and complete this. So 2, 4, 6, 8. And I know there's an 8 here. This is 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, and then obviously 8 times 1 is 8. So my least common denominator is 8. So I am going to go ahead and put an 8 here because that is my goal, is to change all these fractions so that their denominator is 8. When I start up here, I notice that this fraction is already an 8. So I don't have to do anything to this fraction. It stays the same. So that makes my life easy. So this fraction I can leave alone. Now I'm going to go down here, 3/4. How do I get my 4 to become an 8, right? It's 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8. So I'm going to create an equivalent of 1 because 2 over 2 means 1 whole. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 3 is 6. So the equivalent of 3/4 is 6/8. It means the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cross that out, and I'm going to put 6/8 here. And then I'm going to do the same thing to 1/2. How do I get from a 2 to an 8? 2 times 4 is 8. So my equivalent to 1 is 4 over 4. And then I multiply across. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 1 is 4. So 1/2 is equivalent to 4/8. So I'm going to go ahead and cross off the 1/2, and I'm going to make it 4/8. Okay, now I've created mixed numbers with like denominators. So I'm going to go back up to my original problem, and I'm going to rewrite this problem because, again, I have to add before I do the subtraction. So I'm going to take these two fractions and rewrite them again. So 2 and 1/8 I'm going to put down here. I don't have to, again, I didn't have to change that 8 because that's my common denominator. And I'm adding the 1 and 3/4. So this is 1, and this has become 6/8 because, again, I changed it to an equivalent fraction. So I'm adding 1 and 6/8. And then I'm simply adding, always starting with my fraction first, right? I have a common denominator. I simply add my numerator. 1 plus 6 is 7. And then my denominator remains an 8. And then I add my whole numbers together. 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay. So this answer here becomes, right, 3 and 7/8. Okay. Now, what do I have left? 3 and 7/8. And I still have to take away this last add-in. So 3 and 7/8 minus 1.5. So 3 and 7/8 minus 1. Now I don't want to write half. I change that to an equivalent fraction of 4/8. So 1 and 4/8. Okay, and now I'm going to subtract. My 8 has a common denominator. I'm good to go there. 7 minus 4 I can do. I do not need to regroup, right? 7 is greater than 4. 7 minus 4 is 3. My 8 stays as my denominator. and then I simply subtract my whole number. 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay, so my answer is 2 3/8.